And this is a part of even when I look at the Charlie Kirk situation, I say, okay, that's clear to me. That isn't like Christianity. I think the word for it is racism. These comments are racist. I simultaneously acknowledge this man, in my opinion, is human. He's made in the image of God. And at the same time, what he said hurt a lot of people around me, a lot of our congregation, even me. And I would say it must be condemned. I can hold both those together at the same time. And a part of what I think the challenge is as we call out the oppression around us, we also do our own inner work simultaneously. And the reason I say that is because, point, it's easy to throw it all on this man. And I think one of the reasons we love to point fingers over there is because as a white male, sometimes it's easier to point out the racism in Trump than it is to recognize it in me. And one of the reasons that I am so quick to call it out is because I know how I was raised. And I have spent years in therapy, and that's not an exaggeration, years in therapy. And all of it was intertwined. Anxiety, panic, theology, racism, relational wounds, all of that dwelling in me. And so what would it look like if instead of trying to clean the projection out there, what if we actually started here and started trying to work on what was happening inside of me? And that goes back to your point. It's not one man. I've seen the vice president. I've seen the Speaker of the House. And just because and when this man does leave, rest assured, racism is not dying. I see people my age, younger, who are still following people like a Charlie Kirk, and all the red flags are going off, going, okay, yep, this doesn't end with one man. This movement, this MAGA movement, doesn't end with one man. And so we've got work to do. But fortunately, I want to leave some hope. Fortunately, there's a whole collective of people that are right here at Vinings Lake. And there's 150, almost a couple hundred of us who are doing our best to do the work. And many of them are young. And I got to be honest, part of the reason I still gather with them, part of the reason I'm still a pastor is because they honestly bring me hope. They bring me a little bit of hope that, man, maybe there are some people out there whose eyes are opening right now and whose souls are opening, and they're doing some good work in the world.
Scott.
Good evening, Pastor. Thank you for joining us. So much good in your presentation, and so much more I'd love to ask you. You know, generational racism, each of us are not born with a racism gene, and yet we have generational racism because environmentally and at home, people who don't look like me are being taught to hate me simply because of the color of my skin. And I agree with everything you've said, but I don't think evangelicals or white Christian nationalists are that dumb. I think they're liars. I think they're lying to themselves, and that they know what you say is so vitally true, but they reject it because of power and the power of racism and the power of wanting to control, to not lose a white privilege that they did not earn, that somehow sharing with people of color in this country means they're giving up something, which they are not. I can agree with everything you say, but then have you thought much about how we change this? I mean, you have such a thoughtful presentation. The truth, it takes courage. You almost lost your church, but based on truth, it's still there, and you're still preaching the message. What are the top three things that need to happen in this country, or that each of us needs to do to right the ship, if you will, and to take Christ out of white nationalism, or take Christianity out of white nationalism?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wonder if maybe the first thing to do is, I don't know, maybe start with ourselves, part of what I was just saying. I think that's where I began. I had to confront my own demons. I had to confront my own way of being conditioned. growing up in the South as a Southern Baptist pastor's kid. There were experiences I had. My father-in-law, for example, my father-in-law was fired from a church in Alabama in 1999 for baptizing a black individual. 99
Yeah.
for
Wow.
baptizing a black individual. So these are experiences I've had. And this is no joke. When my wife and I met, one of the first stories we connected on with this, because my father, Southern Baptist pastor, had a very similar experience, though didn't get fired, but took a lot of heat for baptizing a person of color in a little town called Blakely, Georgia at the time at a church. And so we grew up under this environment going, oh, that's interesting. But simultaneously, while you have those experiences, you're being conditioned in a culture that you're not even fully like aware of. And some of these cultures, it can be subtle slights, right? Like, be careful around that neighborhood. Do you hear that? Do you know what I mean? Like those are things that you're picking up along the way. And then what happened for me is when I grew up and got a little bit older, I realized, oh, my goodness, I have more in me than I ever thought I did. And I have to unlearn. Or as you know, some of the great writers of our time have already said. I mean, we brought in at our church Austin Channing Brown. I don't know if you know her. She has a fantastic book called I'm Still Here. I don't know of anyone that says it much better than her work. And she came in and shook the foundations of our church. And a lot of people did get upset. They couldn't handle it. Call it white fragility. Call it what you want. But they couldn't handle it. But I think a part of what we do is we start here. Me as a white male, cisgender, heterosexual like me, I start right here. I do my internal work. And then I think second, what we've been talking about, I think there has to be an exposing going on. I don't know about you all, but I am so tired of playing these religious games. Like getting up, having a show, singing our songs, and then walking out the door and being more racist than anyone you could ever imagine, and then convincing ourselves or trying to pretend that we aren't racist, when, to your credit, what you just said, I agree with you. I think most do know. And if I'm honest with you, I wish I could tell you that wasn't true, because it does break my heart.